If you are building a studio in a garage, then this is going to be for you. This is going to be a video where I interview one of my clients who made an amazing studio, as you can see here, that is just going to blow you away, and you're going to learn a lot from this discussion. It's more like a podcast, so it's a little different than some of my other videos if you've seen others on my channel. But I guarantee it's going to be amazing. So I hope you guys enjoy it. As always, if you're on the DIY journey, definitely check out my free soundproofing workshop at soundproofingstudio.com. Otherwise, sit back, relax, enjoy, and I'm sure you'll find a lot of great information in this interview with my client and his garage studio that was in Auckland, New Zealand. All right, welcome everybody. So today we're doing something a little different. I actually have one of my clients here, Roy, who's in New Zealand. On the other side of the world, it's Tuesday there and it's Monday here, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
It always blows my mind. And we managed to do this over like 8 months of coordinating across the pond, the large pond on the other side, and getting your studio built. So you're in it right now, which is pretty
I
amazing.
I am indeed. We're
Yeah.
here.
I know it looks amazing through the camera. I'm like, it always blows my mind to see it and be like, oh, it's so awesome. That was a garage, and now it is a full-blown studio.
Yeah, indeed, indeed.
Super curious to know first, Roy, just how it's been since we finished it. We finished it in April of this year, 2024. Was it April or May? I can't remember.
You- April to May, finishing off little bits and pieces. Mainly the lighting was the last thing to get finished off. But yeah, probably more May.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so it was about May. So you've had several months now. It's September when we're recording this. And how has it been? Like, what are the things you've noticed? Maybe start with the good, then you can talk about the bad if there is any bad. Um, but yeah, just
Uh,
I'm really curious to know how you like it.
yeah, it's great. The space is excellent. There's not really any bad. So, sound wise, I mean, it's doing everything that I wanted out of it and what we set out to achieve, which was soundproofing this room as much as possible, obviously, and then treating it in a way that we're getting the most optimal sound for the small space, and it is small. Hopefully, you'll put some pictures up in this. You'll
Yeah.
see there's a brick wall in front of me, and so there's some interesting stuff. We've got polished floors here as well, so stuff that potentially you wouldn't do in a studio, but it looked good, and actually it's fine. We've supplemented with rugs and bits and pieces, but it's come up really well. I guess the testament to that is my father likes to, when he comes over, likes to come into this room because he can actually hear everything clearly.
Yeah.
And so yeah, when people come over, it's this is a room to listen to music and just in a way that you don't in most environments, right? So
Yeah. How has your mixing and recording changed now that you have this room versus what you were doing before?
well, it was expensive because once we had the sound treatment completed, my old speakers weren't really up to the task.
Oh,
So
really? So you got new monitors, right?
yeah, so we went through the monitor investigation phase, and it was really interesting because tried as many as we could. You could really hear the difference in the mixes previously to now, and you could definitely hear in the different speakers we auditioned the mid range, especially change between the speakers. Problems in the spaces I've been in just suddenly, became noticeable.
Mhm.
Oh, that's why I couldn't mix that vocal. It was like
Yeah.
I just didn't understand what was happening with the frequencies until both the combination of the room and the speakers, and I think they really went hand in hand. So I've got Genelecs now, and
Great.
for better for I mean they're great and very clear in that mid to upper mid range.
Yeah. I
Uh,
found the same thing in my room. I started with the Yamaha HS8s, used them for years, but it wasn't until I upgraded to these Neumann KH10s. The Genelecs are great too. Getting up to that next level that you're just like, oh my God.
I was missing so much, regardless of whether you have a good room or not, right? But if you have a good room, it brings out maybe the negative side of your speakers, and then brings out the pros of the good speakers. So I'm glad you did it, even though it is expensive.
So, so that's been great. And one problem I've had, and so this is temporary name is RD103, which is the third iteration of studio builds I've attempted somewhat
Yeah.
or the RD stands for Reader's Digest. Reader's Digest. I found a Reader's Digest how to build book once, and that was the start of the naming of the studio.
The studio, yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, my building techniques haven't really progressed that much. Hence, we got a great builder, Aaron, to get involved with this project. But the base has always been a real problem in the spaces, especially I've only had small spaces to work with, and we discussed this at length as well.
Hmm.
So the base trapping, yeah, priority and getting the depth of in the corners and getting them trapped out. And so we've got, you can see behind me, there's the diffusers, and then to the left and right, there's those panels, and behind that, it's quite deep in terms of base trapping. And it really, we didn't know how well it was going to work until pretty much we'd finished the last layer of this thing, and then all the base problems kind of went away. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, we did, just so everyone knows, and I'll show kind of the B-roll here of really just the back end on my SketchUp design that I did for Roy. And then you guys actually took my designs and then kind of also customized them a bit, which I would think was amazing. Had some, I think your bass traps open on hinges so you can store things behind there, and you added some more insulation in there. But really what we did is kind of rare, that I do these designs because they are kind of expensive, but they are awesome when you go floor to ceiling. We did all full custom floor to ceiling acoustics. So we built his studio as a soundproof room, and then we built another room inside of that. So it was a room within a room within a room, Russian doll style, uh, which is a little crazy, but worth it, right? Except for your ceiling. Your ceiling are just three clouds, three ceiling clouds. We
Yeah,
did.
yeah, and then but it's lowered as well. So we insulated the. I mean, that was the most time consuming part. Was the outer layer, getting the mass um, in between the walls, and
Hmm.
soundproofing those, but in the ceilings as well. So two layers of plasterboard,
Hmm.
quite thick, or something each. And then we hung the via rondo clips, another two layers on that. And so, yeah, that was all the way around. I think it's around 1.5 to 2 foot. Actually, it's probably more 2 foot wide from outside to inside walls.
Yeah, yeah, it's heavy. Yeah, and I'm
Yeah,
surprised you're using feet there, Roy. We did this all in meters.
from measuring walls.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good stuff. I That'll help our American imperial units over here. But yeah, it was fun to design this whole studio in the metric system, which was cool. And you mentioned the Rondo clips, which Roy's studio was my first time building in New Zealand, so I found a lot of the door we got from Pacific Doors, I believe, was the company. They were great. And then the Rondo clips were from Jib something.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So, actually, New Zealand has a good amount of supplies, and Australia as well, for soundproofing, which is great. Better than even in Europe, I found. So it's really great that we were able to do all that, without having to get really anything from the United States. I don't think there was anything that we
no.
sourced.
I think the only thing we ended up trying was the green glue, and we ran out of supply in the country, so that was the end of that.
Yeah, there you go. But you did, speaking of green glue, let's talk about this because I specified no green glue in this build. I was like I still am on this kick. I'm not using any green glue, but you guys went ahead, unbeknownst to me, and used carpet glue,
That's right.
which is cool. And I know that you're a big proponent of it now. So maybe explain how that was and what that was like.
Yeah, well, I mean, YouTube's interesting. There's lots of ideas on there. So we thought, I mean, we didn't know any better, but we thought we'll looked at the price of green glue, and over here it was really cost prohibitive. And so we thought, oh, what's the alternative? And I saw I can't remember now whose channel it was, but a video on a guy trying out all sorts of glues, and one of them was carpet glue. And so we went and bought a few tubs of all the different carpet glues and tried them out, let them sit for about a month, and found one that was still retained its kind of elasticity, but a bit rubbery, and it's, between two layers of jib, it was definitely adding a deadening as opposed to not, or as opposed to the other glues. So we went with that. I think we bought all the stock in Auckland, New Zealand. I was just seen driving around every Bunnings warehouse, buying carpet glue, and so if it's on every in between every layer of plasterboard here, and it was it's a total deadening difference when you whack the stuff that hasn't got the glue on, and then even just knocking on the stuff with carpet glue in between, it just sounds solid and deep. So
Yeah.
we think it worked really well. Certainly wasn't any downside to it. Glue CE mix, I think it's called.
Say that one more time. It kind of glitched out.
CE mix, CEMIX is the manufacturer, and
Okay.
carpet glue. So yeah, look, it worked for us, and then we used the green glue soundproofing sealant, because
Mhm.
that was actually cheap, and it went on really well. So that was our primary sealant, and then the jib sound seal, fire and sound
Mhm.
sealant is the other one we used, because we used a lot of that as well.
No, tons of it, right? Yeah,
Every,
uh,
every little
yeah, acoustic sealant is something that you just buy tons of it and you just use it like candy. It's just like put it on, seal it up, And you guys, just so you know, they also added jibboard, drywall, plasterboard, all interchangeable depending on where you are in the world, to the inside of the garage walls, which is something I've also done a little bit here and there. I think you guys said it did work, right? You felt like it was an improvement, obviously, to have the jibboard in between your bays on the existing outer walls to beef them up. But it was a
yeah,
lot of work.
definitely. Yeah, it was a lot of that took the most time. That probably, cleaning out this space, which is only well, it's now 20 square meters. So cleaning out the existing space, cleaning that up, getting filling in all the cavities with two layers of jibboard, or something of similar mass, gluing it in, sound sealing it all. But every layer we did, you could notice a significant difference. And from a sound proofing perspective, the first layer was good. When we built the second wall, soundproof wall inside, then it was pretty much what it is now, soundproof. Apart from we hadn't received the doors yet, so we couldn't truly
Yeah.
know. We big hole there. There's no windows in this room, and that was another design decision we made, because we wanted it as soundproof as possible.
Yeah.
And the soundproof requirement wasn't anything other than, there are houses around us, so it was a bit for them, but it was more for internal. We wanted to not annoy family and friends who are in the house while things are going on in this room at any time of day and night. And it can be almost too loud to listen to in here, and we can be straight on the other side of this monitor, and you can barely hear anything's going on. So it's
Crazy.
it's pretty crazy, actually.
Yeah, it's really, isn't it cool? I mean, it is like a fun party trick. Like, hey, check this out.
Yeah.
Play the drums as loud as you can, and then go into the living room, and you're like, I don't really hear them. Well, I'm glad from my perspective, obviously, soundproofing is what people pay me for. So it's like, okay, fingers crossed it works. And it did. And I think so people know you have a drum set in there. You guys have been played drums in there, right? And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the loudest instrument I would say you can possibly play, pretty much. How does it work with the drum set? And this is just so people know, we did 2 layers of jib board. It's kind of hard to say, like in the US, it's 5/8 inch drywall. For you guys, we used 12,
18 mil
18 millimeter.
plasterboard. Yeah.
Yeah, 18. Wow, I
Yep.
thought, yeah, we did like some combination though, right? Wasn't it like,
Well, there was some, so everything, and that was a really good um, point that you raised with us was don't worry about the materials. We're interested in the mass
yeah,
that we're trying to load into the walls and keep it even all the way around. So we were finding and calculating the mass of the materials that we were putting into the walls to make sure we had it even, had it even. So we used some like fiber cement board on the outside, thinner, but it still was very heavy. And likewise, we used 18 mil plywood for the ceilings.
that's right.
Then we had actually maybe it was 15 mil jib plasterboard we had
That's what I'm trying to
because
remember. I think it was 15
yeah,
or
because we needed something from the ceilings to screw the hooks in and stuff like that. So we decided, yeah, 18 mil plywood and then the plasterboard on top of that for the second layer in the ceiling, which worked well. And yeah, I think that came together pretty well. I mean, the calculations work in terms of mass all around is solid. The wall in front of me, which is the brick wall, there was already an existing fireplace there, and we liked the look of that. So we, I called you up and said I would really like to keep the brick in there, and it wasn't really wide enough being a fireplace. So you suggested, well, just make the whole wall brick, and I'm going, really? Isn't that a bit much? But it looks great. Everyone comments on that. It actually doesn't affect the sound now that the room's treated. It was pretty bad before the room was treated, and I'm not sure, if panels would have been enough. I think the floor to ceiling um, acoustic treatment is really helped out this room because it was pretty live before we put that in with
yeah.
just the yeah.
Yeah, I think, the design we did for your room was really inspired by the non-environmental room design, minus the fact that we have a lot of diffusion on your back wall, which, by the way, as we're talking about this, everyone's probably wondering about that beautiful quadratic diffuser behind there, which I custom designed for your room. It's a quadratic 13 diffuser, and then Aaron, who should give a big hand of applause, actually built this thing for Roy, um, in New Zealand. So it was really just him alone, right? Doing most of the work.
Yeah, that's right. So you and I got to make the decisions, and he got to implement them. And there was a lot of scratching of heads. And
Yeah.
Wilson says, "Do this," and we're like, "But how?"
Don't tell him that, Roy.
No, it was yeah. There's I think the one big takeaway is retrofitting an existing space has a lot of challenges going through the room. We had to accommodate and yeah, all sorts of things. And so building fire stops between the getting through, that's the stuff that from a builder's perspective, I think was quite challenging. I'm not sure it was interesting, but it was it was challenging, right? And also neither of us had worked with like isolating clips and all that sort of stuff before. So we were just following your lead on that, and that's really this whole project up till the very end was just like Wilson said, it'll be good. So let's just stay the course. Actually the last thing to go up was that diffuser in the back there, and it all just came together like literally once that thing went in. It was all good. So yeah, follow the course, follow the Wilson's course. There you go. Let
Follow
him
the
be the cap.
course. Yeah, yeah. It is true. It's kind of like you have to trust me. I have to trust myself because I've done this now many times. But it's like if you do the process and you do it correctly, there's some wiggle room for mistakes. I will say that. People think it's like all or nothing. It's not quite true, and I think you might agree with that having done it. But the less mistakes you make, the better the end result for sure. Um, and so your design is awesome because I can now say, hey, we did this, we did that, and it worked really well. And a lot of what I did with, Roy's design is like a lot of acoustic theory, sprinkling of art, uh, mysticism in there of like, yeah, this will look cool and this will be good, and I'm glad that it worked out in the end. The other thing that's cool about Roy's setup, and I think everyone's probably wondering this, is always the HVAC system and the ventilation system, right? The really fun part of this project. And for your system, we had a similar to mine, pretty much the same setup. So we had the mini split behind you, which you can't see. It's above your head, I believe, right
Right.
above the quadratic diffuser. And then we also can't see is that he's got an intake and a return with an HRV, supplying fresh air constantly through the room. And we actually ran the HRV through the rafters above, which I was really worried about at first. I hadn't done this up until your project, where I had built a baffle box in between the existing ceiling rafters, and I was nervous about it not being very big. And in the end, it worked out great, right? So that was really good to see that that worked out, and um, we didn't have a ton of airflow coming through there because it is a smaller room, but it can be done, which I think is an important takeaway.
Yeah, it's like I have a meter in here, and yeah, it is definitely supply for one person or two people. It's easily supplying on the lowest setting enough air in here. When you get a few more people, it gets band practice type environment. I crank up the air and it blows through, and it's fine. It was definitely one of the more challenging parts of the build. We didn't have a lot of room either outside or in the rest of the garage, which is the laundry area next door, which has now been renovated as well.
Oh, nice.
So we didn't want to put massive big boxes that were baffling the air and just taking up more space there. So yeah, we learned a lot about ventilation and just kind of a lot of thinking about how we were going to get the air from outside into this space, because I mean I just assumed that air conditioning did that and or heat pumps did that, but apparently they don't put air into a room. So yeah, when you've got a soundproof room, there's not much air coming in.
Yeah.
Uh,
Are you grateful to have it? Because a lot of my clients will say, I don't want it, or people will say, I'm gonna not do ventilation.
yeah, you have to. I think it's a no-brainer. I'm in a massive room, maybe get away with it, but even then, it's surprising how quickly the oxygen gets used up in a room once you close the doors. It's 15 minutes and this meter's kind of pinging off if I turn the ventilation off. So
Yeah, and you
um,
said oxygen, but like CO2, is that a CO2 meter that you have there?
yeah, CO2 meter.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was gonna say there is a misconception. People be like, oh my God, am I gonna die in this room if I don't have and it's like, no, you won't die. But there is a buildup of CO2 which gives you headaches, and it's just like I was thinking about it today. I walked in my root studio today and I was like, it just smells so good in here. It feels fresh. Like I don't know how else to describe it, right? Like having fresh air in a room is actually a luxury. Even rooms in your house probably don't feel as fresh as your studio.
Probably the driest and freshest smelling
Yeah.
room in the
Yeah.
house. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas usually the studio is this like the dirtiest Coke cans everywhere and beer bottles. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it smells like farts. So that's a good thing that we have fresh air in them. So I wanted to, maybe just ask a couple more questions, but we don't have to go. Obviously, there's a ton we could talk about forever and ever, so we don't need to do that
Yeah.
forever. But really, I guess one of the main things that I'm selfishly going to ask is like, was it really helpful having a designer? Because a lot of people are probably weighing the pros and cons of like, hey, should I hire someone, pay all this extra money for them to actually sit down and design this? When I'm like, I've watched YouTube, I can just go do it myself. What's the point of hiring someone to give them plans and also just ask questions and stuff like that?
We started down the track of when we first started. It's like, oh, well, I've done this a couple of times before. How hard can it be? And there's your information. In fact, yours was the first information I saw on the internet, right? And we
Mhm.
started searching around for others, and then started researching what everyone was saying. And from what I knew, from previous attempts that were issues, what I wanted to solve. And again, is just creating a great sounding room. You don't need to go to the lengths that we did, but especially if you want to do a soundproof room, it was invaluable having not only the designs but the knowledge. I think first up, we gave you some dimensions and some options, and you immediately said, "Wow, if we can get another, I think it was like 3/4 of a meter or something, half a meter, width wise, it's going to be a lot better."
Yeah.
And that was, decisions made through knowledge early on are going to save the project. And we don't have any regrets. We thought long and hard about everything you said and then mulled it through. And I think our ethos was essentially, okay, are we going to back ourselves into a corner if we don't do what Wilson says, or if we do this? Do we want to talk about making an adjustment and seeing if we can still get a good result? And so that worked really well between having you as the professional sounding board and designer, Aaron as the professional builder and constructor, and then myself just trying to figure out what's going on in between and deal with the suppliers.
Well, you're the boss, really. So that's the good part. You need someone who's like, this is what we're going to do. And the client usually should be that person.
Yeah, hopefully. But I think, decisions were made, and they were made on science and fact. And whereas if I had just been responsible for this build, we would have had a lot of regrets. I can tell you now. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, just that room size made a huge difference. It was overall, I didn't realize how much of the room we were going to lose with the double wall system, and then another wall of about 150 mil, maybe more, of soundproofing materials. Sorry, not soundproofing, insulation and
Yeah, acoustic panels.
acoustic panels and stuff. So, but again, what I say to people now, if I wasn't interested in soundproofing, like one of my band members, he doesn't want to do soundproofing, but he does want to get an acoustically good sounding room. Putting floor to ceiling panels up and doing that actually is not that expensive and can be put together pretty easily on any existing room. If you don't want to mess with walls or build anything in between, add an extra layer of walls and you can still put panels up as
Mhm.
well. But
Yeah, it's like my room here. Although I kind of wish I had done what you did originally and designed like a pretty awesome studio, you know, with the acoustic panels on the inside there, floor to ceiling, and just made it look really nice and professional and clean.
it
Um,
worked really well. And I think one thing that happens is it sucks the noise out of the sound out of the room
mhm.
into the panel. So then the hardest problem you got to deal with is how do you add some live back into the room, the diffusers and just the various hard surfaces, and that did that and it was way easier to kind of add some live back into the room than it was to take it out, I think.
Yeah, that's actually so what you just said is really interesting because Philip Newell says that in his book. He says, he likes to kill the room, completely absorb it, and then add life back in with diffusion. And for him, it's mainly just wood paneling on the walls, in
Yeah.
specific ways. So, and another thing I wanted to mention that I think is so important that I've learned now doing this a lot, is that when you get a team, and we had a really good team, like you and I communicated well, and then Aaron and I and you all communicated well. And I think and I also want to say that like, I try to take my ego out of this as much as possible. Like, it's really cool to say, hey, I'm the studio designer, and like, it sounds really cool, but you guys did a lot of cool things that I didn't think about, and I think it's really awesome when someone comes up with an idea and we all say, "Hey, that's actually a cool idea. Let's try that out." Like whatever it was, whether it was the bass trap modifications or being I'm my feelings are never hurt when good ideas are created from the team rather than the supposed designer. So that's something I'm always looking for in these projects is a great group of people collaborating to create the best thing possible. And I think we did that with this design, which was really fun. And hopefully one day I'll see it. Hopefully if I get to New Zealand. That'd be so cool.
Yeah, it was I wanted the space to be as multi-purpose as possible. Because originally on the original design I gave you, I was like, oh, let's build a vocal booth out in the other laundry area, and it just wasn't going to be practical.
Hmm.
So instead we compromised, and some of these big wall panels behind me are actually on hinges, and the whole thing will swing out, and so you can isolate a singer or an amp, or put the drums behind there and just get a bit more separation in the room, just kind of play with the room acoustics a little bit in here. And then the traps in the front are all on hinges as well. And so we just tried to experiment there, nothing that would compromise what we were trying to do, but give us options in the future. And I think there was, good stuff that we all talked about, and just then chucked it in there, and it's worked good.
Yeah, yeah, I think it was a great idea, and again, I'm learning so much. One of the hardest things with home studios, like you said, is space, and nobody has enough space. I haven't really worked with anyone who's like, I got all this space and I don't know what to do with it. So having movable panels, adjustable acoustics. I know you had read Philip Noah's book too, and you're like, oh, there's this whole section I wish I had read sooner on adjustable acoustics, but you really did incorporate that in, and I think that's awesome. I'm always thinking about my next personal studio, and I'm like, what would I want to do? You kind of you kind of take the little bits of everyone's designs that worked really well, and I think that's one that's really useful for people out there. Is like, how can I make vocal booths just by swinging something out and creating, baffles or things like that. So, anyways, I think this is probably getting to a good stopping point here. I'll have a lot of editing to do. I don't want to do too much editing. So, but I think, people can comment on the end of this video and stuff, and I'll see if I can answer it. Or maybe Roy will answer it if he feels like answering YouTube comments. Probably not. But I think hopefully you guys learned a lot from this. This was a really fun project to work on, and hopefully, yeah, there's a lot to take away if you're going to DIY this yourself. One last thing I will say is that, I think you ended up spending more than you wanted to. And I think everyone in this world, I'm learning that the price of materials, the price of everything is just going up and up. So having a wiggle room in your budget is smart. And I think Roy would probably agree with that statement. But it's worth it, right? In the long run, I think no one really
Totally.
regrets it.
No, once we were committed, I mean, we had a budget indication, but we didn't have any time restraint. So I think it definitely cost more than originally thought. But it was on stuff that, you don't think about, like the electrical. I mean, uh, that's a common, an area that gets missed, and it's so important to get the, for the lighting and the enough power around the place, even Ethernet and all that stuff through in here, and keep it hum free and all that. Because half the equipment I had to replace was because I suddenly could hear that there was hums inherent in, like, the sub that I had.
Yeah.
There's got a little buzz there, and it was just super annoying once you get into such a acoustically quiet space. And so, yeah, that becomes an interesting endeavor. So, but yeah, budget. Yeah, if you're going to do it properly, you just got to kind of go forward, get it done as quickly as possible, because, as you say, prices aren't coming down for any of these materials, and the soundproofing materials are kind of expensive, and quite a bit of material. But yeah, no, all in all, well worth it, and 100% agree that having, your services that you offer to do the design and just to guide us through the whole process was absolutely essential to the success of this build, and couldn't have done it without you. So again, Wilson, thanks very much for everything you've achieved on this build. We're very happy.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's what I like to hear. It was a pleasure too working with you guys, especially you, Roy. It was awesome. Really a good good time over those 8 months that we worked together. So yeah, like I said, thanks again, everybody, and we'll catch you later. Hopefully I'll do more of these too if you're watching with other clients as these projects get done. As you know, projects like this take a while. I think 8 months was about what we decided with yours. So you'll see more of these coming out as they kind of finish up, and we'll get more of those.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that awesome video. Thank you so much to my client for giving some time and going over this. I hope you learned a lot. Building in a garage is awesome, not always the easiest. You're always going to have some hurdles. Again, if you're going on that route of DIY, doing it all yourself, check out my free soundproofing workshop. I've got nothing to sell you. Literally, I make all my money through my clients who hire me to design studios. So that's just free knowledge for you to learn. So that's at soundproofyourstudio.com/workshop. And then for those of you who are looking for a designer, a studio designer, let me know. Go to my website at soundproofyourstudio.com and click on the Soundproof Clarity Call button, and you can see if you're a good fit by filling out the application. All right. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I'll see you all next week with more information on building your dream home recording studio.